Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are currently doing our what is this called? Means of attaching, hang on. It is the MLM, the means of attachment of large payloads. I don't think that's how acronyms work, but okay. That is what we're doing here. We have 2 launches for this, and you'll see that we've loaded up our Soyuz. Now, I've taken a bit of a look at what this thing is, and it's a lot of things from what I can tell. So if we go into here, we can see these are like the MLM outfittings on Rasfit. We are going to be wanting to put this on Nauka. And I mean, there's a lot going on here, right? Basically, if we look at our ISS configuration, we can see that one of these is a radiator panel, and that's pretty much what it boils down to. On this end of the radiator panel, it's got a grapple fixture. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to pull that one off. And then this is just an airlock, and that's pretty much what it boils down to. There are a few other things with regard to what this actually ends up being, because if we go, hang on, that's just the ISS. We need to go back to here. If we go back to here, we can see that these have, this is the airlock component here, this is the radiator component here. It's got grapple fixtures on top of here, and it's got this portable work platform, right? So looking at this overall, this is basically the whole thing. So this is the MRM-1, but this is actually the RASVET version of it, and I'm not entirely sure, because this is all for the RASVET module. And what exactly is the RASVET module? How is this related to Nauka? Now, it might be a component of Nauka. I don't actually know that for a fact, but this is our Nauka module here. What I'm planning on having this do is we can see here that this is the LCCS part, and then this launches the SCCS part. So this is assumably assembled in 2 parts. So basically what I'm going to do here is I think that we're going to, we can see that this is a docking port here. I think we're going to have this be like an RCS module. We'll have a couple of grapple fixtures on here, and then I think we're going to attach the airlock on here separately on another flight. And that's the way that this is going to end up working. So this is going to be a fairly complicated thing to do. I think that's pretty clear. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go inside of this fairing here. We're going to open up our service bay. And the question is, how do we want to actually pack this thing in? So what I want to do, I think, let's see, we would want to pack it in such a way so that the docking port, we would have a docking port junior here, is attached like out over here, right? That would be ideal. So it would be attached about there. Now, we'll want to move that inside of the bay, no doubt about that. So let's grab that docking port and move that inside of the bay to be about there or so. Now, we don't have a lot of space here, so this is going to be kind of interesting. I want to get this guy turned around and docked in, but we might actually have to move this out here. Oh, hang on. Get rid of that. Okay. We might have to move this out here so that we can actually work on it and then mount it inside of the bay a little later on. So that's probably what we're going to end up doing here. So this is going to be attached to the station. We can bring up the inflatable airlock, but that's going to be a next flight sort of thing just based on the size, and we need to do two flights anyway, right? So that's reasonably fine. We've got this decoupler that we could have be our grapple fixture, and we know that we're going to need to have, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a battery on here. So that's going to be like a Z200, something along the lines of that. And then I'm going to put in, I think, a remote guidance unit. And we're going to have this not exactly auto-install itself. Well, it's going to kind of auto-install itself. So a remote guidance unit there. I'm going to put in some RCS on this, and that is going to be like these guys. We're going to put, I think, quad RCS thrusters on here, just so that it can install itself a bit. Then we're going to do some RCS tanks. Now, obviously, this is intended to be something that, like, Kerbals can be inside of, but I mean, we've done this sort of thing in the past. So something about like this, and then as far as this radial decoupler goes, I think it's way too big. So we're going to need something more like a cubic octagonal strut out over this way as our grapple fixture, and then we can just put in something like, where are we? We would want a 1x1 structural panel. That might even be too big. So it'll be something kind of like this. That's going to be too big. We can't really get away with that. Maybe we'll just have this cubic octagonal strut be the grapple fixture. So it would be something like that. Then we would have a radiator on here, right? And that radiator would extend this direction. So we would put in a thermal control system. Medium is way too big. So we're going to need to do a small thermal control system here. That'll end up being about there. That'll be extending out like that. Okay, so this is a self-install sort of thing, right? And then the airlock, in theory, would go in front of this. Okay, I'm just thinking about how we would align all of that. So the airlock would be attached in on another flight, with the idea being it's really a horizontal sort of attachment, that airlock, right? So that would end up being... I think we're going to need to move our RCS out a little further. Something like this. I'm going to move our RCS thruster blocks to be about there, just so that we can have a little bit more space. We might move these a little later on. But as far as the actual attachment point here goes, we're going to need to have one. I'm thinking right now that all we do is we put in something like a micronode. The micronode doesn't want to attach there. Okay. The modular girder hub could, but it's way too big. So I think a cubic octagonal strut, and that ends up being attached in. Did we not grab that? We didn't. Okay. So the cubic octagonal strut ends up going somewhere about there. And then maybe we even have two. The question is, when we bring up an inflatable airlock for our next flight, let's just do... Okay, so inflatable airlock for our next flight. That would end up getting attached, hypothetically, about right there. I feel like maybe we move this back a little bit further. So that would end up moving back in local space, back to be about... I don't know, maybe this is good. So it would end up just being something like this. That's about the amount of space we would need. The inflatable airlock is going to be sent next mission, though. Now the question is, if we have this attached here, how does this end up looking for a detachment, right? That is not going to work. This is way too small of a service bay for that. Okay, so that is going to need a different stowage option. And the question is, what are we going to end up going with for that stowage? It's not a huge amount of space needed. We could think about just enlarging this service bay and going for a larger service bay. So that would end up being, if we went into our payload here, something like the SM-18 service module. But I mean, that has these dividers, which isn't really what we're looking for. We could go for a 2.5 meter service bay. That would definitely be a little bit more space, but it wouldn't really fit in as well. I do prefer the concept of the 1.875 meter service bay for this purpose. The question, of course, being, how would we place this inside and get it out of here, right? Because it'll need to fly out on its own power with physics on. Unless we had an extension here. This might cause us some significant clipping issues. But if we had, say, hypothetically, a 1P4, and that was attached right there, then we would grab this guy, right? And we would attach that in theory, about right there. That does cause us some clipping issues, as expected, but what we can then do is we can extend it out and release it out here, which I think would be beneficial. Also, what is with this rotation? Okay, there we go. That'll be slightly better there. So this is beneficial for us. The question is, how can we get this stowed at this point, right? Well, we do have a couple of options. We can remove this Clampetron docking port junior. We can put a G00 hinge right here. And we can stow this away at this angle instead. So that ends up being more along the lines of this. That is a lot closer to being stowed. No doubt about it. The question is, how can we get a little bit more space here? Well, if we go further this way, we're almost certainly going to run into clipping, right? But we can see how much we can get there. Okay, basically none, unless we wanted to get clipping down this direction. Unless we did more hinges. More hinges could be an interesting option there. And the question is, how would we go about stowing that? Well, the answer to that is that this would end up being stowed. We would take this off entirely. We'd put a G00 hinge about right here, right? Well, for now, I'm just going to put it in here. And then this guy would get attached approximately like that. Although I would want to rotate it a little bit differently, specifically like this. Then we would take this off, put in another G00 hinge, and that would end up attaching there with this hinge attaching like that. With the idea being, well, we would need this to be rotated out over one of these directions. Let's see. This is not the way we need it to be rotated. It would need to go this way. That would then allow us to take this G00 hinge and angle it like that. Then we grab this guy and we plop it in right over here. And that immediately is going to create potentially some problems. We're going to need to have it be rotated about like this. Like that. Okay. So now I'm going to call this the, what did they call that? The MLM? Okay. I'm going to call this the Soyuz MLM, and we're going to save this. And I want to look here at how we would go about deploying this. So first things first, this would get deployed to 90 degrees, right? Then we would need to extend out this arm like that. And then we would need to work on these hinges. So this hinge would get deployed to here. This hinge would get deployed to here. And then we would be able to deploy this pretty much for free at that point. The question is, do we need a different docking port size? Well, we do have docking ports up here. In fact, we have a number of them. So we probably don't need to bring any special docking ports. That should be reasonably okay. So let's just bring this back to 90 and then back to 90. Unextend this guy. And then grab this hinge and put that back at 0. Okay, now we're going to need to make sure that this remains stationary as we lift it off. So we'll just put a strut connector from here and a strut connector. That one didn't actually go from about here to about here. Okay, there is a spare strut connector in there. We can just get rid of that like this, but that should get cleaned out. Okay, so it would be something along the lines of this, and then next flight, all we would need to send up is the airlock, because that's otherwise good to go. So I think that's fine. As far as these docking ports up here, I do want to have some extra docking ports, so that will be a convenient thing to have. Let's just save this, and we're going to launch this from the Woomerang launch site. And let's go. So that is going to be very interesting, no doubt about that. Specifically, what's going to be interesting is getting that thing unfolded, but it'll clip through without any problems. We're not going to have any physics issues unless we undock, right? So we just don't undock. We should check our staging, absolutely, before we go. There have been some changes made here, so the staging may have broken. And we also need to make sure that we have a Kerbal engineer. We shouldn't need one for this flight, but just in case. Okay, Bill is here, double checking staging. Let's see, this all looks decent here. I think we're okay. So we're going to 300 kilometers is fine. Skipping circularization is not necessary, and we are going to head out to the International Space Station, setting that as our target, and let's launch into plane of target and engage autopilot. So this is going to be a Soyuz launch here. Soyuz has the same problem as the Proton. That is to say, in this representation of it, once these detach, it loses some stability down over here. But we'll see how that goes. It should go absolutely fine in theory. We're also centered in the pad, unlike the Proton, which is very, very nice. We've got about 8 seconds to launch here, and of course we are going to see some assistance from these SRBs on liftoff. Cool. SRBs are already flamed out. No shockers there. And when are we going to burn out these side boosters? Okay, not until about 70 seconds from now. So that seems fine. Rolling to azimuth is completed. And let's just make our way right on through here. So good orbital inclination, of course, as we would expect. Now, to be clear, this orbital inclination was specifically, I think we've modified it a little bit from like collisions and dockings and stuff, but it should be about correct still. This inclination, in reality, was chosen to be relatively easily reachable from both Florida and Kazakhstan launch points. So that's why they chose this inclination. Cool, so we are, of course, lifting off nicely here. We've got about 45 seconds of burn time left in these side boosters. We are, of course, going to be manually staging those. But we've definitely got some decent apoapsis going on here. Nice and rigid thus far, although if I recall correctly, we do definitely have some issues with this stage once the SRBs burn out. We'll see how that goes. So that is all absolutely fine for now. And we can just simply decouple this launch escape system. We don't need to like eject it or anything through these clampetrons. That's all absolutely fine. There's a fair amount of clampetrons up here, and we can definitely grab one if we need one. I think we need the small docking port size, though. But if we need to create an adapter, we certainly can do that. So no problem whatsoever there. We are currently at an apoapsis height of about 35 kilometers. And our gravity turn is looking okay. But our boosters are about to detach. We've got about 5 seconds of burn time left in these outer boosters. 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay. As expected, we're a little wiggly here, and yeah, these guys did impact each other, but no actual issue there, in theory. And we'll just wiggle our way on up to orbit. So we've currently got about an apoapsis of 70 kilometers. We'll be able to get rid of our fairing fairly soon, and we'll see just how much wiggle there is going on here. There's a lot. There's definitely a lot. And this is caused, I believe, by this joint. We could probably do something about that, but I don't think it's necessary. We've got plenty of delta V. We'll make it to orbit. Deeply, deeply unconcerned about that. Let's get rid of this fairing about now. And you can see just how much wiggling is happening up here. We should be controlling from this pomegranate, and yeah, we absolutely are. Cool. You can see most of the wiggling actually comes in at these joints here, but there's a fair number of joints. Currently, our apoapsis height is going down, but we are getting a good amount of horizontal speed. I actually don't know why. Why are we burning in this direction? I mean, getting the horizontal speed is good, but why are we getting rid of our apoapsis height? MechJeb is making a strange choice here, in my opinion. We are about to hit space here, and we can see this is definitely ramping up its wiggling. We've now hit space, and we are seeing our solar panels expand. That's fine. We've got about 40 seconds of burn time left in this tank here, and once that goes away, things will get a lot better for us. But honestly, as we progress here, we're holding about the same attitude, so we're getting less reduction in our vertical speed. It is still going down, but we're getting a lot more horizontal speed. This is absolutely fine. To be clear, if I didn't think it would be fine, I would have disengaged the autopilot and manually taken it over. But it is absolutely fine here. Apoapsis height is arriving at 300 kilometers as of now. Beautiful. So I want to take a quick look at our inclination. 2.2. Looks like our inclination change should be done after our circularization, so this seems absolutely fine right now. We will very, very slowly turn our way over. We do have reaction wheels in this, right? I'm pretty sure we do. Let's see here. Yeah, we definitely do, right? Or are we entirely reliant on monoprop on this? Well, we do have a reaction wheel inside of our service bay. That is a guarantee. So that might actually be our only reaction wheel that we've got on here, but it is good enough. So let me just physics warp our way on over to this position. We're going to start this burn in about 15 minutes, so we've got lots and lots of time to do this. This orbital insertion burn is going to eat up almost all of the fuel in this stage. We have so much fuel in this thing, it is kind of insane. Oh, we should jettison this guy. Okay, and let's warp our way on around. Cool. So we're going to warp around here. We're still coasting to circularization burn, and looks like MechJeb is automatically coasting. Okay, sounds good. So we're going to complete this, and then our autopilot will be completely done at that point. Of course, we do still have some wiggling going on here, but that's okay. We don't mind that. This is good enough. You can disengage autopilot. We don't need anything else. Okay, so we are in a good enough orbit, and at this point, I want to head over to our descending node. 2.2 degrees indicates to me that I do want to do an inclination correction here. So we should bring this back around to somewhere around here or so. 75.3 meters per second. I'm going to jettison this at this time. It's slowing us down tremendously. Yeah, we can get a couple extra delta V out of it, but we really don't need it. So let's go. Fantastic. It's wild to me that this is all first stage. But it absolutely is. That is the way that that is set up. So all of this slows us down a lot. That's a lot of mass. Specifically, it slows us down in the turning, right? And we have so much delta V, it really doesn't matter. Technically, at this point, we don't need this stage either. We're absolutely fine to just go on the Soyuz. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to utilize this delta V to put us in the correct orbit and to do our rendezvous burn, but our braking will be done with just the Soyuz vehicle. Is the way that that's going to work. So 50 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Excellent. So our inclination change will be absolutely no problem whatsoever here. Just getting that few delta V there. 0.1 meters per second is good enough. So that seems fine. Let's get our rendezvous burn set up here. That is going to be somewhere around... Actually, that's pretty close. Yeah, somewhere around there looks good. 1.2 kilometers off. That's good enough. Let's align to this node. Excellent. And we'll warp around and we'll just use this fuel to propel ourselves to the station, but we'll jettison this after this and we'll just use the fuel in the Soyuz itself. Cool. Warping on forward a little bit here to get into position for that burn. This warp feels like it's going slow, but it's kind of not. We've got another 10 minutes left in it here. Now 5, 2, 1, 0. Excellent. And we're going to be commencing this burn very, very shortly. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1, 0. Mark. So this will get us very, very close to the station. That'll do. And from here, I'm going to jettison this stage. Yes, this is getting rid of a lot of fuel, and no, I don't like that. But here we are. We really don't need this. All we need is the fuel that we have on our spacecraft here. So the fuel that we have here is 1415 meters per second, which is more than enough. Okay, there we go. And that puts us into just our Soyuz here. Now, I believe that this is a spare Clampetron docking port that we really don't need to have. I don't think we can store it anywhere useful, but I believe that this was put on here specifically to bring up a spare at some point. It's mildly awkward, to be sure. Let's set the ISS as our target here again. Apparently that got lost sometime. And let's warp on up over here, moving into various target modes. Cool. So 0.8 kilometers and a relative speed of 73.1 meters per second is really not bad. We can burn towards target. Ooh, this is responsive now. Okay, we can burn towards target somewhere around here. I want to put this in kill rod as well. So somewhere out over this direction. Cool. And that puts us at 3 kilometers apart, apparently. Yeah, we need to warp closer. Okay, so let's warp a little bit closer in here, and we can see these nodes drifting apart now. Yeah, I just burned that too far apart. Okay, that is absolutely fine. And we'll just burn this out over here. Cool. Somewhere around here. Then we're going to head around to relative velocity minus, and we can see that's now 0.2 kilometers. Oh, I think this is the station loading in right now. Beautiful. Goodbye, frame rate. Goodbye, frame rate. Okay, yep, that's definitely the station loading in. Let's see where that is. It should actually be down this way. Yep, 2 kilometers out. That sounds good. We're just going to need to bring this down to a relative stop. I want to get this guy... Do we want to dock it? I think we need to determine whether we need to build an adapter for this or not. Okay, let's commence our braking burn right about now. I actually don't know what our thrust to weight is. 0.71. Okay, this feels about right. Actually. Approximately right. So let's just bring this down to about 5 meters per second. Excellent. We're still a ways out, and we can determine whether we need a docking port adapter next episode and where exactly we're going to be docking this thing up. That'll all be a next episode sort of thing. So let's just get this down, and you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Kintogan, Ali Lee, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.